This is a ManeHustle Media podcast.
Yo, this is Sharmane from the Single Simulcast. And when I'm not making you laugh or making up parody songs, I'm kicking back, listening to Militantly Mixed.
Hi, and welcome to Militantly Mixed, a podcast about race and identity from the mixed race perspective. I am your host, Sharmane, aka Mixed Girl Maine, and we are back to our regularly scheduled programming, or at least our regularly styled programming. For those of you who've been with us for a while, you know that we had some changes over the last month. I took a week break while we changed the schedule up at ManeHustle Media. We swapped Militantly Mixed from Thursdays to Tuesdays, and we swapped Blurred Comics from Tuesdays to Thursdays, only because of our recording dates. Blurred Comics, we record on Tuesday nights, and then I would release those episodes the following Tuesdays. But sometimes our stuff would be kind of late by then. You know, topical episodes would be very late by then and stuff like that. So we switched things up so that it made our Blurred Comics thing, which was recorded just the day before, the 2 days before, more up to date. And since Militantly Mixed isn't necessarily news, topical, need to know right now, we moved that over to Tuesdays. And Black Radical Queer was on a brief hiatus due to loss in the family for Javia Nicole, but she is now back. So this will be the first week that everything's back on track. Last week's episode of Militantly Mixed that aired on Tuesday was a recording of my speaking engagement. So while I did talk about mixed raceness, it wasn't the only thing I talked about. I did also talk about intersectional identity, my sexuality, my belief system or lack thereof, things like that. So that was a different episode from the normal as well. But this week, our new schedule finally being set. So everything in ManeHustle Media is as we want it to be right now. Militantly Mixed on Tuesdays, Black Radical Queer on Wednesdays, and Blurred Comics on Thursdays. So looking forward to going forward with this current setup. We do have a few more shows that I've alluded to on this show before coming down the pipe. And if you follow us on social media, I'll start talking about that a little bit more so that we can get more people interest. One of the shows that it's almost ready to go, we just need a little bit more content, is called The First Time I Ever, which is a podcast about first experiences. I know you're probably thinking first sexual experience, but that isn't necessarily the nature of the show, although we will probably have an episode about that. But it's the first time you ever anything. First time you jumped out of a plane, first time you flew a plane, first time you drove a car, first time you fell in love, first time you read a comic book, whatever your first time experience is that really touched you that you want to share, you can come on that show, share that story, and that's what the show is about. So we're just really collecting content right now so that we have enough content for each episode. If you would like to participate in that, you can follow us on all of our social media platforms. On Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, we are at Militantly Mixed. I do have some social media handles for The First Time I Ever, but I don't have any artwork up yet, so I'll share those later. But if you want to participate, you can go ahead and email me at Sharmane@militantlymixed.com, and we can connect, or you can just drop me a story. You can give us a call at 323-545-6001 and share your story on that. I will record it from there and put you on the show. So yeah, I think that's good. We got a few things coming down the pipe. It's those other shows are just right now we're in the content building phase of those shows, but they will hopefully be out sometime after the new year. Yeah, so good things. I've had a lot of change in my life over the last month or so. If you've been following this show, you know that up until recently I was full-time podcasting. I wasn't full-time surviving off of podcasting, but I was full-time podcasting because I was unemployed, and now I am employed again. I had to finally go back to work for somebody else so that I could pay the bills while I continue to build up ManeHustle Media as my future. So I'm punching a clock now, which is an adjustment. I was laid off about close to 2 years ago, and I had spent all that time underemployed or unemployed or freelancing and things like that. And so I'm adjusting. I'm getting used to that new schedule and everything like that. but I'm not slowing down on the podcasting at all. I have enough episodes banked for Militantly Mixed for months and months to come. So for the people who I have interviewed who are waiting for their episodes, it's coming. I'm sorry. I know some of you have interviewed about 3 or 4 months ago and you're still like, where the hell is my episode? I do place them in a particular order based off of what's kind of going on either in my life or in the world at the moment. What's touching me right then is kind of what inspires me to pick the next episode, or if people have something going on specifically that needs to air at a particular time because of fill in the blank. So I am going to get that content out there. It's just we only release 1 episode at a time, so that's why there is that delay. But I'm just so grateful. I mean, last week I interviewed 3 people. This week I have 2 coming down the pipe. I have soft conversations, negotiation conversations about when and where and how for I think about another 6 or 7 people. So between what I already have banked and what is coming, I don't know when we'll ever air enough episodes, and hopefully one day ManeHustle Media will be so big that I can live off of that and I can start making this a daily show or twice a week show or something like that to just get all this content out to you guys. We are building a map for mixedness. We are building a oral history of mixedness, which is something that I would have loved to have had as a child, and I didn't have it, and so I made it, and I'm so grateful to all of the people who participate. And I know I spent a lot of time on my intros talking about how grateful I am, but for those of you who don't know me, there's been a huge change in me because of doing this show. I have mentioned before that I suffer from chronic persistent depression. I also have been in a bout of major depression for a few years now. This podcast in particular, all the shows have done a lot, but this podcast in particular has been the one that dug me out of laying on the couch for hours in the dark and watching 30 Rock on repeat because it was the only thing that made me laugh, stuff like that. Militantly Mixed really did that for me, and knowing that I get to connect with other mixed race people on a regular basis has done so much for me. So I really am grateful, and since this is my platform to talk about it, I'm going to tell you guys how grateful I am, and I hope that you're sharing the show with folks, because I think everybody who has come on the show deserves to have their platform as loud as it can be as well. So if you're a fan of the show, please share us on social media. You can share my posts so that people have direct links to episodes on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Militantly Mixed. Let people know what the show is like, and even if they're not mixed race, it's still impacting people that are non-mixed race. I'm surprised to find out how many white listeners I have and how many times somebody's episode does say something directly to a white person that makes them realize a behavior that they have. Even those who view themselves as non-racist, they realizing that they have some inherent racism due to their upbringing or whatever. And I didn't expect that to be part of what was happening with this show. I originally created this show for my selfish desire to speak to mixed race people, and then it became this is actually a platform for mixed race people that I need to make sure I keep going forever for them. And now it is all of those things, plus we might be fixing white folks, people. We might be doing that. So it's awesome. And I'm very grateful to our monoracial listeners too, because the more you listen to us, the more normal and real you realize we are. And hopefully your behaviors will impact us, whether in the workplace, you're hiring more of us, intersectional people. You're not treating us as unusual or weird. You're not avoiding hiring us because you're afraid that you might say something wrong in front of us. Things like that. This is the kind of stuff that is coming up in conversations that I'm having with either listeners or guests or friends or whatever. So there's just so much good here. And I'm not a positive person by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a big old pessimist, but this is one area in which I am not a pessimist. I know that something here is important and needed and necessary. So I'm going to keep going as long as you guys keep helping, keep participating, either through coming on the show and sharing your stories, following us on social media and sharing our stories and trying to get us a bigger listenership so that people know that we're out here, or your messages to me directly, what have you, all of these things. We're also a fan-sponsored show, as I've mentioned before. We have sponsorship through Patreon or PayPal. You can sponsor us at a monthly subscription as low as $1 to as high as anything you wish. There are different levels of rewards or swag depending on what you donate as. And if you want to do a one-time donation, you can also hit us up on paypal.me/militantlymix. And if you do those one-time donations, depending on the amount, I'll find an appropriate swag that matches up for you as well, even though I don't have anything like that posted. But yeah, for the sponsorship on Patreon, if you do a monthly sponsorship, there is different levels of swag for you. So help keep us going and growing. Right now, we do have enough sponsorship to keep our hosting for the show so that no matter what, you'll always have an episode, which is such a relief in my life to know that people cared enough just to know that we're going to be on every week. That part has been so amazing, and I really am appreciative to both my friends and non-friends who I don't know that are sponsoring right now. That has been incredible. Also, one of our sponsors became a guest, so there's just a whole lot of interconnected good stuff over here. So I'm really excited, and I hope that you continue to connect with me and let me know every week what's going on with you guys, because it does help me develop the show even better for you. Okay, I am excited about today's episode. We have a return guest, and this is one of those things I'm really excited about happening. Is our very first guest for episode 1 of Militantly Mixed was Jon Corbin, a rapper from Canada. He is a biracial man of Black Guyanan and Caucasian Canadian Mennonite descent. He presents obviously biracially Black, like light-skinned Black, but he grew up almost primarily white. And a big part of our episode 1, was about that, sort of trying to fight to be seen as white, because that's what he knew. He just didn't look it. And so that was the name of the show, and that was the controversial title that got people starting to listen. But once you listened, you realize, oh, it makes so much sense that if you grew up in a certain way, but your outsides don't reflect your insides, how do you deal with your identity? And that is sort of what this show is about, how we deal with our identity when we don't present the way we feel. I'm the flip of Jon in that I present very racially ambiguous, more Latin looking than what I actually am, but I grew up primarily Black, so I think of myself as primarily Black, and a white person's not going to see that in me. A Black person will, or may, but a white person isn't. And so, we're constantly, as a mixed race person or a racially ambiguous person, we're constantly fighting to be seen as what we feel that we are inside. And that is why this show is so good for anybody dealing with any kind of intersectional identity right now, because we all have this very similar thing, fighting to be seen as ... Yeah, it's so crazy. So this episode, we bring Jon Corbin back, and that is because he has a new album out. He dropped his new album Every Day on Friday, November 16th. I think you can get it on Spotify right now, but it's also up for sale. You can follow him on social media, on Twitter at Jon Corbin Music, to go ahead and cop that album. And I'll play a little bit of it on this episode for you all today to give you a taste. But I'm so excited to have him back. It was such a great conversation. Basically, we got to talk about what his life has been like in terms of his mixedness since we spoke for the first time. So when we first met, if you haven't listened to that show, please go back to episode 1 and listen to it so that you can hear the change in Jon. It's so crazy. When he first started, he was barely scratching the surface of his mixed identity or even feeling maybe that he didn't have a place to do that in. And we connected right away. And because I am so mixed and have such a mixed upbringing, a lot of our personal conversations that weren't recorded were about like, no, you have a space, you have this space and whatever. And then when we actually got to talk about it, it was like therapy to be able to release these anxieties that we've had bottled up inside of us because we don't get to talk about this on a regular basis. And so that's where we left him. He was just at the beginning. To me, it seems like he was just at the beginning of kind of doing that. And he and I have interacted since then, through social media or email when different things have happened. So I've been a little part of his journey since that episode, and you haven't gotten to experience that. But this episode will allow you to do that. So yeah, this is Jon Corbin and I coming back to talk about mixedness post his first interview on the show, and also the journey to get him to the point of this album Every Day, which is released. It's just so good. Like, it's so good knowing that we got mixed folks out here, that we're building this mixed family. He mentions it in this episode, but when I had first seen him in our video chat the very first time, I said, oh my gosh, you could be one of my cousins, because he does resemble actually one of my cousins. And through our conversations, we've sort of become that, like for those of you who are not Black, you probably may not be aware of the play cousins that we have, where as Black folks, we just connect with other Black folks and we call them cousins because they're like family. Or if there are, elder Black folks, aunties and uncles, even if they're not family, and so that's a big part of Blackness. And in our mixedness, it's the same kind of thing. I'm building a family full of cousins on this show, and Jon Corbin would be kind of one of those first cousins that I got through the show. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and switch over to that episode. I'm going to I'm going to play my favorite song on this new album first, and it's called Lessons to Learn. So we're going to go ahead and play Lessons to Learn first, and then be joined back with Jon Corbin.
We just trying to figure this life out. Write out with black ink. Some want to white out what blacks think. And the truth about the life that we lead. The fight to be free. The new battlefield is the heart. And my heart puts its life to a beat. And it's judge granted my God-given right to be me. To live out loud. When the sky's gray, I spit out clouds. Words like thunder that give out sound. When the rain pours, brainstorm, stress level code red. So screaming like Kanye fans to go west. So I left, hit college, then turned pro. This life moves fast, but I still learn slow. And I might lose cash, but I still earn dough. So I owe a lot to my fans in the first row. You only get a couple trips around the sun, right? Enjoy the sunlight, you only get one. Never waste a moment of my lifetime, waiting for the pages to turn. I only wanna let my light shine. I got love to give and lessons to learn. Lessons to learn.
The challenge is the balance of living in the moment or building up your talents. Charge to enlarge what the Father gave me. Can't really call if I'm succeeding lately. On the daily, there's a lot on my mind. I wake up in the morning, anticipate the grind. Feels like a season to lay down the prideful. Life moving like a speed demon. B-side Michael. Bad cause the pain is too hard to explain. Umbrella on the shelf, can't get out of the rain. But the growth is delightful. Hope that I'm moving insightful. Implore my sight past trials that murk me. There's more to life than surviving the work week. Hope is bright when the path is curvy. My thirst for God, it spurs me. This is my life.
Never waste a moment of my lifetime, waiting for the pages to turn. I only wanna let my light shine. I got love to give and lessons to learn. Lessons to learn.
Like fingernails on a chalkboard, a top 40 with a knob at 10. I can't afford to ignore these life lessons anymore, yo. They're making me cringe. Self-absorbed, no wonder. Put me in a syringe. So vain, feel the pinch in my skin. Apply pressure to the plunger and push it in again, causing our own pain. Trying different methods, result in the same conditioning. Clinical definition, insane. When it rains lemons, squish them and sip the lemonade. In the school of life, I'd rather skip ahead of grade. Lord, help me to separate so I can hear from the teacher of experience and possibly levitate without having to question the lessons of yesterday. Mark's report fell short, but now it's time to set it straight. Plus, I'm needing a switch. I don't want to grow bitter, but get better in this.
Never waste a moment of my lifetime, waiting for the pages to turn. I only wanna let my light shine. I got love to give and lessons to learn. Lessons to learn.
Hello,
What's up? What's up? How you doing?
cousin.
I'm so excited for you. This is awesome. I've only gotten about 6 songs in, but I'm so happy for you.
Oh, thank you so much. In a sense, it caught me by surprise, but I think it's just a sign of the work that I've been putting in the last year and a bit. So.
It's great, especially Lessons to Learn. Oh gosh, Lessons to Learn starts out so clean that
Don't.
it's it's so good. So let's talk about it. You and I haven't. We recorded your my very first episode. So we recorded you back in, was it end of May, early June that we talked to for the first time we talked. And what's been going on since then? You got this whole album. You sent it to me yesterday. I've like I said, I'm about 5 or 6 songs in at the moment. I already have a favorite, even though I'm 5 or 6 songs in. What's been going on with you?
Well, it's been a neat journey. I have to say that our conversations have been really fruitful, ongoing in my life, which has been great. Pretty fascinating, even from the jump, like, because we did that pre-interview and you said this on the pod, but you said, oh, you know, you could be one of my cousins. And I was, I thought that was cool. And I didn't know you yet, but listening to the show as it's been going on, it's been a neat sense of family. Mm-hmm. And hearing people's experiences is so much. It just feels like kin. To hear what people have been going through and how that relates to mine. And it's been neat to think, I actually hit you up on Twitter and said, like, I've had some positive experiences in the barbershop. Right. I
was so happy about that too. Yeah. So let's talk about the barbershop. What was one of those positive experiences?
You know, I have not. I've been to shops sort of later in my life, like as a young adult. So, you know, maybe the stuff I saw on TV was sort of really lively conversation and people talking all the time. And, you know, sometimes the shops I go to are really quiet. But I think I mentioned last time that I'd been going to one for 6 or 7 years and feeling nervous all the time. I think just admitting that helped dissipate and ease some of that tension.
Yeah.
And you know, talking basketball or talking, you know, movies or whatever. And suddenly I'm not so shy to speak up.
That's awesome.
So it's been, just, you know, I don't have a guy. I just go and sit in whoever's chair is free. And really fruitful conversations, talking basketball or concerts or music or whatever.
All right. So here's a rule in case this comes up again. If you don't have a solid guy, whose ever guy doesn't have a line, that's the dude you don't go to. No, your barbershop story actually was one of the things that I was getting hit up about, well, early on because you were my first episode, but it's been a repeat thing. It's come up with guests that I haven't aired their episodes yet, where they said, you know, that guy from the first episode when he talked about this, and, you know, I have one that's white presenting I just talked to the other day. And he recalled your story when we did our pre-interview too. And he was like, you know, it was one of those things I could feel the anxiety. Like all he said was barbershop. And I felt the anxiety, you know, for myself and hearing, you know, that I wasn't the only one that had this experience, you know, felt good. So I think the best part of this show, or at least what's happened since I was able to put your episode first, is that people realize it wasn't just, you know, it's not always the terrible stories. It's not always the good stories, but it's those medium everyday experiences that are the part that are affecting people the most. And, you know, a barbershop experience is a medium everyday experience, but you could have a lot of anxiety going into it if you have that background that you have. So it has definitely impacted people. It's certainly one of the stories that comes up when people mention, these are the episodes I've listened to, and the barbershop story is one of those ones that come up.
Interesting.
The other part from my experience of people reaching out to me about your episode was the either through hip hop. So in your case, you talked about coming to it late, and some of the other folks that I've talked to, it may not have been coming to it late, but using it to have that touchstone back to your culture, like trying to figure out where you fit in the culture has been another big part of it. And so with you dropping another album, it's a perfect time to have you back. And let's talk about like, what has that evolution been like for you from the first time you dropped music to where you feel now? Because this is a pretty clean album, like independent or not, it's pretty solid from how far I've gotten so far. So let's talk about your evolution.
Yeah. So the last record I dropped was in 2016. It was called A New Direction, and it was mostly self-produced and mostly mixed myself. And that came about. It was, again, you know, in the years leading up to it, I did a song here, a song there, but suddenly a theme really came through very clearly. Even verses I'd written off the cuff. You know, somebody sends me a beat, I write to it, and then I go, oh, this actually all fits together really well. So I started pursuing this project called A New Direction. And it was to me, it was maybe recognizing some dissatisfaction in my life with how I perceived myself and self-concept. And so that was, it was a real narrative for me. But the album got stuck because I don't remember if I mentioned this last time, because we were trying for our third kid, and we wound up 3 kids.
Yeah, you did mention that, and then all of a sudden you had triplets, and
So I remember gathering some friends from the scene and just saying, listen, I think I'm kind of done. I'm in my 30s, which, is a different generation for hip hoppers. And I recognize that. And I was mentoring people already. And I just, I said, hey, listen, I'm here for y'all. I think I'm going to try and drop this album, but the kids came before the album was done. But I couldn't let it go. So any 15 minutes I had, I was doing editing, and I released it. And as I was about to release it, a buddy of mine came along and he said, listen, you're not giving yourself enough effort for the work that this is. Let me help you. He helped me do a little crowdfunding campaign so we could do a video, get a website, get good artwork, all that kind of stuff. And then we stayed friends, and that same buddy was starting a label. And he signed a couple of people I knew that I was mentoring. And so 2016, as the album was dropping, he asked me to just come onto the label and be a creative director for those guys. And then and I tried to help him grow the label and sign new artists, and we couldn't find anyone that was a fit. And at the end of 2016, he's like, I think you might be the guy. I said, oh, that's interesting, because I was just about to stop making music.
Oh, wow.
And I had another friend of mine move into town, and he said the same thing. He said, I don't think you should stop. And so then this label opportunity presented itself. It's called Lost and Found Music. And I've been with them since the beginning of last year. And so having a team with me has really changed my songwriting, my focus, and having some extra musicians around. So yeah, it's been a little bit of a lighter lift to get songs done. And that's provided access to a really, really good engineer who just believes in our music. And so he works with us at a great rate. So yeah, we've had a few advantages, a lot of them based on, relationships, just being good people. And that's led us to some really cool stories to help get this album done.
That's awesome. And yeah, that sense of support that you start to get as you're sort of building your family of musicians, and in my case, other podcasters and stuff like that support you get from others really does make the difference between, am I going to just put something out, or am I going to feel really good about what I put out? So yeah, that's awesome.
When I told those guys that I was done, I didn't realize that I didn't have a lot of community around me. When I gathered those people around me, they were all from different cities and different towns, and there weren't a lot of people around me, weren't a lot of places to play. So it really was community that helped spur this thing forward.
Yeah, and that's similar to the mixed race thing, right? Like, until we started to touch back, and this was something that you and I experienced on our sort of pre-call, which was supposed to be half an hour and was like, almost 2 hours?
90 minutes, yeah.
Was that thing of like, oh gosh, you have some experiences that I have, and I felt alone, but now that I know that you've experienced it too, I don't feel so bad. And this, what is it now, 4 months since the show's been live, and every person that I talk to spurs me even further to go like, oh, now it's not about me, which it was in the beginning. Now it is about, like, I can't stop because I have all these people that need a space to talk, and I need to listen to them. That I agree. That sense of community is a thing. It's unfortunate you felt like you were about to stop, but I'm glad that the people stopped you from stopping. So what about, you talked about a theme in the previous one. What was happening to you as you were putting together this album to get from The New Direction to Everyday?
Yeah. So I started the summer of 2017 just with a writing camp. We gathered 6 guys together and started writing. And the first big song that came out was the first one that we felt was really good was called You Care. And to me, that was, I pitched a simple melodic line to the writers I was working with. And I played it for them on my phone. I recorded a voice memo. You can hear my kids yelling in the background. And I gave it to a really great musician and producer named Jeremy Rodney Hall. And he sat down and played some piano. And we had that song done in about 3 hours. I had the rhymes written already. But it was this simple structure, that things that had been going on in my life were really, really challenging. And it was really challenging at work. It was obviously really challenging at home, trying to raise 5 kids. My wife was going through some real work crises in terms of where she wanted to go. She had a path for it. And that path just seemed to keep getting blocked. I've been, back to work for a little bit after being home for 9 months to raise the triplets, and still didn't feel like I had my footing after a year plus of being back at work, probably 2 years by then. If you say that having triplets is a crisis, that's enough. Right?
Right. It's a lot.
It was a lot.
Everything
and then
times 3.
And then for us, the work and it wound up being miraculous, but I had they caught something precancerous in some like medical screening. So wow. I had a bunch of tests and they just happened to find this thing that was precancerous and they wouldn't have looked for it for another 5 years. And I'm just like, oh, they caught it, which is great, but I wasn't happy about it. I was like, damn, I'm 35.
Right.
I got to think about cancer and your family's got to get checked and all this screening that happens after the fact. That I wasn't really feeling that celebratory.
Right.
And so all of that pain was there. And then the simple line is this sort of assertion of faith where I just say to God, I believe that you care for me, even when I am screaming like a toddler, and I obviously had a lot of experience with toddlers. And this is how I felt spiritually, why isn't this working for my wife? Why isn't it working at my job? Why do I have to deal with this cancer? It was why 5 crises at once? And so I just shared in the verse, I need help, but even though I'm struggling, I believe that you care. And it was just sort of trying to ground my faith and being able to move forward. And what I found is that from the triplets to challenges at work to all of these things I'm talking about, it has been an everyday grind. The fight to just keep the family going. There's a song that starts the album called Go Hard, and it's the checklist: wake up, get the kids, kiss the wife, go to work, spit it, and praise God every day. When the triplets were in utero and my wife, she was threatening preterm labor, she had to be in the hospital, she was hospitalized, and every day there was a whiteboard with how far along she was, and it'd be 24 weeks, 3 days, and the nurse would come in and erase 24 weeks, 4 days. Man, this is taking so long. And they would just say, every day they're inside mommy, they have a better shot. They're going to be, and when I started to deal with the cancer stuff, and when I finally started to get a grip on it, I remember somebody saying, you know what the approach is? I don't have cancer today. And it is amazing how, all of these things are stretching over a period of for 4 years from when we found out we were having triplets. They just turned 4. It's been a fight. It's been really hard.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it is this trying to survive and I hopefully thrive every day. That's the thing.
So what tracks do you feel, you mentioned Go Hard, but what tracks do you feel is kind of where you're at right now, post album's complete, but pre-album launch? What are the ones that are hitting you the most right now?
It's a great question. We're doing a few shows in the Toronto area. So I've got a band and we've been building up some songs, and things hit at different times. There's a song that I worked on with some friends and it kind of fell into my lap to be on the album called Be Alive. And it's not meant to be so literal in relation to the cancer stuff I was dealing with, but it does give you a real sense of joy and sort of remembering where you came from, remembering those times where you felt alive spiritually, emotionally. That's something that my buddy Shad has a song called Remember to Remember, and that's it. Remember remember to remember where you came from.
Right.
Another one that I really have enjoyed is called Soul Bringer. And it's got a couple of my kids on it, which is really fun. And that one is, the chorus just says, if you feel good or if you feel low, I can't stop giving you soul. Like, I'm still going to make music that feels good and tries to bless you, because whoever hears it, they could be feeling good or feeling low. And I could be the exact same way.
Right.
Those are a couple for sure.
That's cool. I'm glad that you've had this going on, and at the point at which we met, I'm not sure how far along you were in it, but I can hear a pretty drastic shift from the previous album that you had sent me, your New Direction album to now. Like, there, even in some of the tracks where you are talking about some of the harder things, there does seem an underlying sound of joyfulness, or maybe to a certain degree some peace from, I guess, what you went through right before you started to phase this album together.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I remember when A New Direction was done, I sort of said to myself, I want to make songs about pursuing joy, but then I never set out to make another album. I just made some songs, and I had the opportunity to be in songwriting camps. We did a couple of them. And then the label was working on a joint project with the 3 artists that were on it. And we collaborated with a bunch of different people, and it wasn't sounding good. And our manager, who's kind of our, he's kind of our Gordy Berry, he says, we need to alter our approach to songwriting. We need to get into the emotion. And that meant that a number of those songs just went out the window.
Right.
A couple of them we wound up scrapping the project and dispersing the songs. There's 2 of them on this project here, Be Alive and Hope Has a Name. But we kind of went back to square one in some sense, and it was really about emotion. So whenever we even started to write a song, we were thinking about what emotion, when we create the music, what emotion does it evoke? And so you just get to be free to play in that emotion. And so I wasn't thinking about a narrative, but then the way that you write lyrics, it's just, you write what's going on. So some tunes, are described challenges, certainly, but that emotion is not fake. I have been forced to sit in each day and try really hard to find the gratitude and the blessings in it. So I'm definitely richer for that.
I think that comes through. I think that's obvious from what I've gotten to hear so far. Yeah, I think you did it. I think it's. I'm glad that it's going out, and I hope other people grab it pretty quickly. Is there? Because I know we have a little bit of a time thing, so we'll probably play out a track or 2 on this episode. Is there anything about what you're going through now, or what mixedness has been like for you since we've talked, this last half a year journey or whatever since you and I talked, but what you were dealing with beforehand that you'd like to throw out before we wrap it up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, going back to the barbershop discussion, I just thought it was neat that when I had a positive experience, I had someone to talk to about it.
That's good.
My wife is my best friend, and she certainly understands my struggles. But it was I think having conversations, and then I guess a lot of the time I didn't realize how refreshing it was to talk about this stuff with other mixed folks.
Yeah.
And so that I didn't and then now I have the opportunity to sort of open up podcasts and hear other people's journeys, and it just sort of alleviates that tension.
I know. I didn't expect it either. I think you and I kind of touched on it when we first talked, but also I was only a few deep, a few interviews deep by the time I talked to you that first time. But since then, that's exactly it. It's that it's broken open this. I didn't even know how badly I needed it. I have mixed cousins, I have mixed friends, but I talk about being mixed all the time, but it never felt quite like it has felt in talking to all these strangers that are now my cousins through the show. These moments of either somebody being really grateful that they can share something in a space where someone gets it, because even if our experiences are slightly different, which we talked about on our episode, your experience and my experience are different, but there was so many places that we related that it's not like even on the tough things, it's not like it alleviates the pain of some of the tough things, but it alleviates the loneliness, I think, more than anything. And for me, it's every week, and I'm just like, every time I talk to a new person, I get a little bit more of that. And, you know, I like I said, I think I had chosen to put your episode first versus some of the people that I had talked to before, because things broke open with you. Like, it clicked into place in a way that told me this was how I needed to start the show off. Like, it would set the tone, it would set the mood for the rest of them, because the earlier episodes were kind of finding that spot. And I hit it, I think, with you. I felt like I really hit it with you. And even some of the moments, some of the things you talked about, and honestly, one of the things that comes up a lot besides the barbershop story is you saying the phrase, which is how I ended up titling your episode, that you felt like there were times when you were fighting to be seen as white because of your experience and the people that had surrounded you. And I thought at the moment that I put that up as a title that it would be somewhat controversial enough to make people pay attention. And it has been the thing that someone has hit me about and be like, that title, I need, like, what is the deal? And I'm like, you got to listen to it. And then people come back to me and they're like, oh my gosh, you know, I didn't realize you guys go through this kind of stuff. And, you know, some of my monoracial Black friends were the ones that said that. And since then, though, the same kind of stuff that you talked about, a lot of my biracial guests that have more of a white upbringing, or at least were surrounded more by white family, they are just echoing that statement. Like, it would have been so much. One person said something like, it would have been so much easier if I just was white, because then I don't have to feel like I'm lying all the time, or, you know, or whatever. And I really feel that that your episode helped me understand something that I didn't get about being bi, because I'm half white too, but I have no connection to that white side. So I don't know the experience like the way you have it. I just have it on the flip side. And it was so good. Like, I still like that episode. I recently listened to it while I was traveling, just to kind of, I knew I was going to be talking to you, so I wanted to kind of get into that headspace a little bit. And Jon Corbin that I spoke to then and Jon Corbin that I'm speaking to today sounds a little different. There's a lot different there. I saved that episode, and so on Apple Podcasts, like, they don't go away. Like, whenever I click on Militantly Mixed, like, that episode's there along with whatever else I've downloaded. So I see that title and I think, I know, because I know that some people had issue with it, and it just sort of, I bat that around in my brain and I'd be like, and then I think, well, you know, this is me, you know, I you know, it's sometimes the word white stands out, sometimes the word feel or felt stands out, sometimes the word fight stands out, and I'm fighting to try and connect with my family, and you know, I've been spinning the album a lot at home, and the first lines of Be Alive are telling a story about when I was 16 I had like a really powerful spiritual experience, but it was I had to describe the void I was feeling, you know, mixed kid, 16, no lean, no dad on the home team. And the other day, my oldest daughter, she's like, I like this song, but I don't like hearing that line. And she said, why? I said, why? And she said, well, because I don't have a grandpa. You know? Yeah. I've got grandma, and I've got British granny and granddad, but I don't have a grandpa. And it just continues to remind me about that navigation. Because I'm not connected to my Guyanese side, I don't know how to raise them with some kind of cultural knowledge. But at the same time, as I've been fighting so like hard to elevate my Blackness or like my Black cultural knowledge, I'm still trying to like be with my Mennonite family, and that carries a lot of history. And then they're half British, and the tension in me, I have some close British friends, and one of them is like big into British history, and that I catch myself sort of, oh my gosh, let's talk about colonialism and the empire, and then he might not see things the same way that I do about those histories, and you go, it's all a fight. And I said to her in the moment, I said, listen, I needed to paint that picture because for a long time I was in a lot of pain. And for me, being in loving relationships helped save that, and finding a connection with God
saved me from being that lonely and being that hurt. And so I wanted to celebrate that.
Right. And it also, with your daughter sort of raising that statement to you, it shows you too, like how much of your mixed journey isn't even yours.
Right.
You know, what you have to do to prepare your children for their experience. I haven't seen them, but I imagine they present slightly ambiguous, probably more on the white side, but you could probably tell there's something going on.
It depends if it's summer or winter.
Right. Right. So, you know, there might be a point where that becomes really obvious. And, you know, we should come back at some point and do a whole thing about the colonialism, because like in my case, I make the joke about being half colonist and having the trauma of having to face that on a regular basis, and why I scream so loud to be seen as the non-colonist side, because there's so much pain in it. So we could come back. There's a few of us that have this, that we could probably come back on a panel and discuss this.
That would be great.
It is interesting hearing that your child is already getting there, you know, at a young age to notice she's going to have her own struggle coming into it, and it's going to be filtered through the way you feel. So whatever you do, you have to have your mind right when you talk to her, so that it doesn't throw her off on a different path as well. And that's a lot of pressure.
Well, for sure. But I think it starts in a place of honesty, and and in that sort of, you know, I try to be real on the mic, but and so, you know, I want those two lines. I want those two worlds. I want everyone to see me as honest. So honestly, I don't know, some things, and I think that because I'm a teacher and want to inspire lifelong learning, that's how I go about things. Like this year, an inquiry question for me is, I wonder what my Mennonite family, what their relationship has been like with Indigenous people since they've been here in Canada for 8-9 generations.
Right.
Right. Like we're talking about
to find out.
Yeah. And knowing that it might not be good. Right.
Yeah. I mean, we can learn things about ourselves that really do stress us out about what our histories could be. Yeah. So for my kids, you know, hey, listen, I don't know a lot about Guyanese culture. I was kind of shut out of that. But I'm going to learn. I've been learning some things, so I can share with you what I've learned. And my hope is, as they get older, they'll be able to add to my learning as well, because they're inspired to learn. So it has to start from me saying, like, hey, listen, this is some disadvantages that I had, but I'm not going to stop. And neither are you, and you're going to wind up being further along than me because of the love community you have. Yeah, and that could be some interesting moments, shared family moments of you guys all discovering it together. That could be interesting. I'm similarly going through that, in that we got our results back from the African ancestry test, and we found out what tribes in Africa we came from. So now I have a country as a place to target in my understanding, and like rebuilding that bridge to Africa for my family. We found out we were from the Atike, the Sogo, and the Koda people of Gabon, and our letter came back with 100% confidence. So they're like really high confidence rate that's where they originated from. I didn't that's why I did the African ancestry, because it was so detailed. They have like 35,000 markers for the continent, and to not only find out that there's finally a country that I can look to. It wasn't even a country on my radar. You know, I didn't even know that Gabon was part of the trade until now. Now I know that it was in the very last part. Couple years of the trade, they had branched that far out, and so like my family almost missed it, you know, like they almost slipped past, but they didn't. And so that discovery is giving me feelings about now being able to say something about Africa, in which I never felt I had permission or even was ever comfortable even mentioning. Like I was always Black, I was never African, and now I'm still Black, but I can learn what my African was, and that's I mean, it's going to take forever, and I'll never probably feel culturally immersed enough unless I were to pick up and move there, and maybe, you know, be lucky enough to live near where one of these tribes currently still exists. I know the Koda still have lands that they are living in and things like that. So, that's a thing, that part of the journey of trying to connect, and the feelings that you have, probably in your case, feelings of connecting to a culture and a people that, you know, for lack of a better way of saying it, you were kind of abandoned by. you know, you didn't get, you weren't raised in it enough, and then it was kind of removed from you. And so it's still part of you though. So what do you want and need to learn to make you feel that you can represent yourself properly as a mixed race person?
Yeah, that's been a huge question, and I haven't been able to answer it yet. I took a trip. I did some shows in Ottawa in August. So that's the nation's capital. I was doing it on the cheap, so I took a bus, and on the bus I met this guy, and it was very innocuous, like just one comment, and that sparked like 2.5 hours of conversation. He's also Guyanese. And so I told him a little bit about me, and he talked about traveling. I've been doing a bunch of traveling and what it's like in Guyana. And so he could give me positives and the negatives. And he had a lot of negatives. And it's one of those things, like when I hear those kinds of things, I was like, do I want to go? You know, knowing the type of person I am, knowing the challenges that are there. Like, yeah, it was in one sense, like it was nice to have some dialogue with someone that could fill me in a bit. The breadth of Guyanese people that have come, he said to Google Guyanese entertainers.
Yeah, I've been doing that with Gabon.
Yeah. What have you found?
Beats, really, more than anything. Beats is being the thing that I didn't like, you know, I'm a big hip hop fan too. We talked about it. And for me, drums were always a really important thing. And I didn't, you know, necessarily have any reason to. It's just that I'm affected more by drums, I think, than other parts of music. And I was a dancer, hip hop dancer, and Latin ballroom and things like that. So popping up with these drum videos of just Gabonese drummers and feeling like just a wash of this thing of like, oh, like my blood wants this. It's a weird thing. Not feeling like there's any kind of, you know, programming or anything like that laced in, but just that sense of those drums were saying something to me and was making me feel like, oh, this could be my gateway into understanding the culture a little bit, connecting through that.
That's fascinating. So another thing that you mentioned that just brought back a whole bunch was you made this joke about how your family like almost missed the slave trade.
Yeah.
And we talked about humor last time, sometimes as defense.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I told you, in May and June, I took a stand-up comedy class. I'd been looking into doing some public speaking, and I talked to a friend of mine who was a public speaker, and he gave me some tips, and he challenged me to take a stand-up class. And so at the end of, you know, in May and June, it's the end of my school year. It's a really hard year. I've been really struggling. I'm taking the bus into Toronto for a 3-hour stand-up class, and you know, it's 7 weeks long, and I'm not finding my footing the first, you know, 3-4 weeks, and it's, you know, I'm the weather changed. I'm battling some low-grade depression. I just don't feel funny. But I also didn't know how to let loose in this group of people. I had something in me, but it wasn't coming out. And I think my fourth week, you know, you're presenting every week to, you know, a dozen people, and I finally got some laughs. And the teacher said, "This is not you. I don't see you yet." And it really got under my skin.
Yeah.
And because in the moment, I remember standing there. She's like, "I don't see you." And I was thinking to myself, well, I don't like myself right now. So I don't really want to show me to anybody.
Right.
You know?
I understand that, like, a lot.
I'm just like, I'm not feeling myself. And I have two friends that are comedians. One of them does stand up. I texted both of them. I said, "This is my experience in the class." My buddy that does more stand up, he says, "You have a really good teacher." The comedy classes I know, they try and put people into a box. He's like, "I'm actually really surprised that you said that to you. You know, a lot of times I see people, this is the way you're supposed to be funny. And so you do it like this." And I said, "Oh no, that's not her at all. Like, we've got, you know, 13 people in the class, and finding their funny is what the whole thing is about." And he says, "Okay, well then you just better get writing." And the next week, I did more thinking than writing, but the next week, she booked a theater for us to do part of our routine in to an empty crowd, but it would be the theater that we would perform in for our final exam. Everyone had to do 5 minutes, and
that's a long set when you're new.
Yeah, absolutely it is. I got on stage with the lights and I'm like, I felt it. I was like, I can do this because I've performed for, a dozen years more. And I finally got genuine laughs. And what I did, Sharmane, was I just bagged on myself. I talked about my dad and how he came to Canada and how he left me with this mixed bag of personality traits that are like all the wrong ones. Like you take this Guyanese and this Mennonite and it's the weird mesh. And I had a character called the Black Mennonite.
My dad is a black man from Guyana. Got in on that West Indian immigration plan. A lot of brothers I know were doing it. One step, very simple. Marry a white woman over 30. They just let you into the country. My mom, a white woman, Canadian-born, from a Mennonite heritage. I don't know if you know about this religious group, but they're very simple living, farming, charitable giving, which makes me a black Mennonite. And I wish it was cooler than it sounds. You know, like I have this vision of it. Like I hear black Mennonite and I hear 1970s blaxploitation film, like the soundtrack's. He wanted to stay on the farm. But the streets kept calling him back in. A non-violent man, but a bad kung fu mamma jamma.
I would watch that animated TV series for sure. Black Mennonite,
right?
Sure. I will say that's even how I bring you up sometimes. I'm like, he's like this Black Mennonite.
Yep. He's devout in his faith. He's simple, but he's just got a little bit of some cool to him, just a little bit. It was great, and I did a bit on the barbershop too.
Oh, good. So I mean, you needed to really get in there about yourself to break open. That makes a lot of sense to me. I'm glad that you did that. I think when we spoke the first time, you were saying you were gonna do it, but I don't think we talked sense about you actually doing it. So that's awesome. Yeah, I look forward to hearing that video. But I do want to get you out on your hard stop. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. But we'll come back together and we'll talk more about some of the other stuff that we touched on today. I wrote myself a note because the other part of it that I now am facing is learning what country we come from. Now I have to roll in the French colonization that I didn't have as part of my history before, and now that I do, that now that I understand this, it's something I need to look into because I've always made, and again, dark humor and using jokes to process some of your feelings. I make the joke about being the colonist of colonists, like British empires, like they've touched every part of the world, and in some cases I'm both ally and Axis powers because I'm Japanese too, and it's just the whole thing, and it's that I make jokes as a way to kind of learn a little bit more about myself.
That's brilliant. Yeah, and I think I see us as like bridge builders.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
And I'm really hoping the music does too. I'm not shy about my faith, but it's not Christian rap.
Right. I can get that because I'm an atheist, and you and I listen to your music. I definitely hear it, and there are parts of it that I don't relate to because of that, but I relate to the you of it all. Mm-hmm. That's the part that I end up hearing. Yeah.
I'm an old head. I love the jazz rap, tribe stuff, but the working with some of these young guys got me, spitting over a trap song, you know what I mean? Like, or a trap style. Yeah. So I'm in between. I'm listening to music and like, man, this is as in between as I am.
Yeah. I mean, you start to notice once you really start to deal with your mixedness, like once you're starting to face it and try to, figure out where you fit in it, you start to realize how much your mixedness informs all the other parts of you. Like, I really listen. I love Japanese rap and I love French rap. Those are two things. And for the most part, I don't understand all of it. I speak a little bit of French. I went to, I took French in school and stuff like that. So I'll pick up, one in every maybe 20, 30 words on the French rap, but I listen to a lot of it. And then on the Japanese side, I may pick up like one in every 10 words, or at least I can pick up a phrase or something like that through it. And it's just, to me, it's mashing up of cultures that I'm from or that I feel connected to. And I'm like, oh, this is me. Or there's this graffiti artist here in LA, Gaijin Fujita, that he does tag art in 1990s LA style, but he uses feudal Japan as the backdrop of it, so that like it might be like a samurai in a pose, but he's wearing Raiders gear, or something like that. And it's I'll send you some pictures. Because as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh fuck, this is me, because I'm like LA black Japanese, So I'll send you some of that stuff. But like these little places where you start to realize that your mixedness is informing your interests, really start to help you figure. You see that you're trying to figure shit out when you don't even realize that you're doing that. And hip hop does that for me. And same, you and I listen to a lot of the same era of hip hop. Some of the new stuff that the kids are doing today, I can't really get into.
Or my high school students. Oh my gosh.
And I did see DMC the other day in person at a Comic-Con.
Oh wow.
He has a comic book, and I bought a print, and it's like, it's our time. It's like, it's Adidas and gold chains and tagging on a subway, type of thing. So it's I'll show you. I'll send you a couple of those things too. But yeah, let's get you out of here.
I'm about to go in. So
yeah. Let me get you out of here. But before you go, any last words?
I want to bless everybody listening, all part of this community. Definitely hit me up on social, Jon Corbin Music, Jon, no H, Jon Corbin Music. But yeah, we're all becoming cousins now. And I just want to encourage y'all to keep being bridge builders, keep digging into who you are, because I think that the mix that we have is beneficial for harmony in the world. I really believe that. That's no front in there. I think that we can help bring some harmony, even though that we've felt alone for so long.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming back. I'm so glad to have this happy conversation about your new project and everything. Album is Every Day, and it drops on November 16th. And by the time we air this, it will have been out for a couple of days, but I'll get the links and everything in the show notes so that you can cop it.
Word. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Talk to you later.
How you doing? Can I tell you a little story? Hey, mixed kid 16, no lean, no dad on the home team. Through the days of the past, I'm combing. Only heart growing fast, I'm roaming. Hey, in a New York minute, I got a new vision. Mark of adoption, Coleman got children. Ultra light beam on an east side street, them in NYC. Now it's me shouting, I'm alive, I'm alive. Hey, that's how my brother felt when the Lord touched down. A new man, the spirit did work. Now I'm rolling in the church like JD and Turk, and it's awesome. Blood in my veins and it's coursing. Consider the pain that it cost him. He gave me a name, but ain't forced it. Till I found faith, his name, I'm endorsing.
We're alive in the sun's eyes. What we know is the sun shines. We're alive in the sun's eyes. And what we want is to be alive. Be alive, be alive, be alive. Oh, be alive, be alive, be alive. Oh, be alive, be alive, be alive. Oh, be alive, be alive, be alive.
I was lost, but a brother got found. I probably should have gave a spoiler warning. Never thought I could pin this all down. Look back and see grace along the journey. See the storm before me was a horror story. From my heart disease to my folks divorcing. It was hard to breathe, so I hoped for a source of coping. Something like a dose of morphine. I was hooked to porn at 14. Lonely and my soul was tortured like waterboarding. When you're told the goal is to be pure and holy, you ain't trying to look guilty before the jury. But the judge stepped towards me like, don't you worry. Most assuredly, he would come restore me. Mind, heart, and family. And most importantly, give me new life to behold his glory.
We're alive in the sun's eyes. What we know is the sun shines. We're alive in the sun's eyes. And what we want is to be alive. Be alive, be alive, be alive. Oh, be alive, be alive, be alive. Oh, be alive, be alive, be alive. Oh, be alive, be alive, be alive.
I'm being made new every day, dude. When I stay true to the one that I pray to and remain in the vine that I take root in. It's okay, prune me when I make fruit so I can make more. Grow in patience, faith, and knock a beat out the park like I'm Babe Ruth. If you pass me a weight, I'll love my my neighbor too. I'm a dunk in and break the hoop, do everything that I was made to do. Run life like a race, if I'm making moves or gotta wait for you. And when I stray confused, make straight my views. Keep the boy on point like a laser. Pew! You reached out when I hated you. Traded me grace for my lame excuses. Brought me back in Christ, gave me the path to life. A fantastic wife and an amazing crew.
And what we want is to be alive. Be alive.
Melatilly Mix is a ManeHustle Media podcast, produced and hosted by me, Sharmane Johnson. Music for this episode was provided by Jon Corbin. If you like what you heard on Melatilly Mix, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also sponsor us on patreon.com/MelatillyMix for a monthly sponsorship or paypal.me/MelatillyMix for a one-time only. We appreciate your support. Thanks, y'all. ManeHustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.